I'm Rob Licuria, Senior Editor at Gold Derby, here with Lester Cohen, Keri, Lederman and Doug Huszti, production designers for HBO's blockbuster crime thriller The Undoing. Now guys, this show is so visually impressive, in large part because it's like we were getting a peek into New York wealth and high society. So I was wondering, Doug, first of all, how did that factor into your preliminary work on the look and feel of the show when deciding where in New York the production was going to be based?
Well, I think Lester gave us a great framework to work within. He scouted all sorts of wonderful high-end residences, but also sort of the opposite of that. So there was a high and a low drama happening at the same time. And when we said high, we meant as high as you could get in New York, the top of the Freedom Tower. And low was the opposite end of that. It was sort of a very impressive range.
Yeah, and so Lester, do you want to speak to perhaps that location scouting, because it's so vital to just setting the scene for the whole show, obviously.
Sure. So I work with Lori Pitkus, who's a wonderful location manager, and we both had ideas. I also looked at a lot of research. These are spaces that we don't usually get access to, and what was unique about this show was we did get access to a number of pretty exclusive pieces of real estate. One of the challenges when you're working with in this milieu, I guess, is that it's very hard to get people. These people are so wealthy and so busy that to get them to pause and even contemplate letting the great unwashed into their very palatial homes is a challenge. But we lucked out, and we did get a few. We found a few places that would have us, and then we augmented all of that with a lot of sets that we built that also that we interwove into the real locations. So like for the Franklin's apartment, there were the exterior was one location, and the part of the house, which was like the front TV room and the terrace, was another location, and then the remainder of his place was built in the studio at Kaufman Astoria. And then the Fraser house was, we found an empty townhouse that was for sale, and then we totally revamped it. Where Keri brought in all the furniture. We made a kitchen that out of a room that wasn't a kitchen, and we just sort of created a whole world for these people to live in.
The series has been acclaimed for its filmic or cinematic quality. A lot of that obviously has to do with Susanna Bier's really impeccable direction, the way it's shot and edited, and particularly its look and feel. It's really polished, lavish, and really surprisingly beautiful to look at while we're dealing with really challenging subject matter. So that was a very interesting juxtaposition. So I was just wondering if you guys could talk us through some of the elements of your production design on the show that gives the show that very polished look. Was it, without it just being the beautiful sets that you were able to secure, what else are you doing to really up the ante and make it look beautiful? Who would like to talk to that first? Who's best placed?
Keri, do you want to talk to that? Or do you want me to?
I was like,
either one of
you can start it. I think it starts with you. So
yeah. So I feel like a big part of that was, there were multiple. What's amazing about New York as a real place is that there are everyone living in these different economic strata are all shoulder to shoulder. And that's what's wonderful about New York, as opposed to other places where you have all that disparity economically, but you're not, near each other. And so what we tried to do was to, through, scale and through color, we tried to sort of create different levels, So like, for instance, the Alves world, which is literally a 10-minute walk from where Franklin lives, is, her studio is like like a few steps below ground, and their apartment is on a street where the subway is elevated, but that's Park Avenue. It's just 10 blocks north of where all this incredible wealth is, and so, we had that color be really intense and a lot of different colors mixing together in their world. And then when we get to the Fraser world, it was still, we still had deep color, but it was much more harmonious. And we really tried to make like the Fraser kitchen feel that red. So it's almost like a womb. So it felt like the family, like a hearth. The family was like the perfect family unit. And then we get to Franklin, it's like he's high up and there's giant windows, and he's above the whole city, but it's incredibly cool. So we had those different levels we were working with. Yeah. So I don't know where I should go from there. Keri, you want to save me?
I think you said it right. I think it was a lot of, right from the get-go, like Susanna expressed how color was so important to her, and telling these people's stories or trying to illustrate like where like what their world is. So I think that was really what helped dictate a lot of like with Fraser's, like with the warm woods and the reds, oranges, and deep colors, and giving that sense of coziness and home and history. And again, the same thing with Franklin's, with the grandeur and the cool tones and the eclectic mix of furniture. And obviously then the Alves with, being that she was an artist and, illustrating maybe some ethnicity with color, and also trying to, it was like bring in, everyone's standing in society, I guess.
That's great. Yeah, you did a great job. It's wonderful.
Yeah. All the things that you're talking about seem so apparent to me when you explain them, but obviously to the untrained eye, when we're just so immersed in the story and the emotion of what we're watching, I think the stuff that you're doing is so subliminal, and without it, perhaps maybe the show wouldn't have been so effective. For example, like Lester mentioned, that penthouse inhabited by Franklin, played by Donald Sutherland, is so ornate and lavish. It almost to me felt like palatial, like Buckingham Palace. And I didn't question whether it was in New York, but it just felt quite jarring to me that they were in this room with a piano or whatever it was. So I was just wondering, Doug, that old money that it reeks of, can you talk us through conceptualizing how you get that across without it being so like blatantly obvious or being bashed over the head with very obvious design?
Well, what's interesting is you said it appears like it's not New York, and what was scouted and what Lester's idea turned into was based on a room that seemed in a way not New York, a room that actually existed, that was a double high room in one of these Upper East Side buildings facing Central Park, and it truly existed. And we based the scale of the set on that room. And so when you say it feels like a room that's not New York, you're right, because ordinary people don't get to see this room. So the views, the scale of the ceiling, the architecture itself, was not something that everybody gets to see here. But it was taken directly from some of those locations. The classical architecture that is in a hallway that links both the location and the stage set, and then was an inspiration for a lot of the things in the stage set, absolutely exists. It's in someone's apartment, but it's not an apartment that mere mortals get to see.
That's right.
And it was pretty wonderful. I'm pretty privileged to be able to look at that architecture and mimic it and make something of it as we did. So
Yeah.
I'm pretty thankful. Yeah.
And, as Lester, as you said so appropriately, the use of space and scope is very apparent, and the differences between each strata, as you say, of this society. That Franklin's space is so massive, and yet it's not empty. It's full of rich and lavish, set decoration, but it felt completely and utterly over the top, and that really works for us, as it gives us the idea that he is also of a huge scope in terms of his character. So that brings me to this. The Fraser's townhouse, on the other hand, is gorgeous. It's full of expensive art and on-trend furniture. But the scope's not the same. And they're also very wealthy. They're living their picture-perfect life. So I was just wondering, is that something that maybe Keri can speak to in terms of how you dressed it with all that really expensive art, to give it that sense that it's lived in, but it's also, to me, it seemed still quite highly curated.
Right. I think with the art, I think that we were trying to, I thought of it as more of like something that's curated over time, and help executing like the idea that there's a history here, and that's part of the story in itself, is like that this couple has a history. They've been together for a long time. They know each other. It's like this, or they think they know each other. But I just felt like, I think the art is from all over, and it was kind of the eclectic mix that makes it feel like it is an art collection, that they do have money, yet it has kind of this laid back, familiar gallery style feeling. I don't know, Lester, what do you think?
Yeah. I think like, to contrast it with Franklin's art is all blue chip, art. It's all, there's de Kooning, there's, Rivera, there's a Turner, there, all of that stuff is not only beautiful, and he appreciates its beauty, but it's also worth millions of dollars, right? Whereas I guess our idea of for the Fraser house was that, I think he probably bought them the house, but they decorated it themselves. And so I think they have money, and more money than we do, but they don't have Franklin money. You know what I mean? Franklin's money is another thing. He's he's on a different plane. But I think the idea was that, there was an eye that was whoever collected all that art, but our main goal with that was to just make it feel like a home, an incredibly solid base for this perfect family that then gets blown to bits,
Yeah, it does.
So,
because I was thinking a while ago with Franklin, I just find that character so fascinating, because you could have made his look really gaudy, like a Trumpy type look, someone who still has a shitload of money but doesn't really have a lot of taste. But no, he's formidable. He's better than us. He knows what he's doing, and his space was perfection, and that made him feel ever more dangerous. And I always kind of was looking at him with that lens, like, what's going on with him? Because he's kind of pulling strings, and it didn't end up being that way, but it was a really nice red herring. So that brings me to this, and I think Lester, you've kind of touched on this already. I'm hoping that I can put this in words that make some sense. It's really important that Grace's world look and feel picture perfect, because it becomes more apparent and painful when it starts to unravel before our eyes. So I was wondering, were there any subtle changes made to the sets as the episodes progressed to establish Grace becoming more untethered to her seemingly perfect life? Who is probably best to speak to that aspect?
I'm sure it's Lester.
Yeah, you know, what's interesting is that she, like, once her life starts to unravel, is she sort of like, she leaves the home. She leaves that perfect base and she goes back to where her father is, and to the beach house. So in a way, it's not that we altered the sets, but she herself sort of like uproots.
She's in her
And I
childhood
think,
bedroom, right?
you know, she goes back to her childhood bedroom and she goes back to the family vacation home, but she pulls herself out of that home base that she had built with Jonathan, you know. So I don't think we didn't alter things, but she is, especially one of the other things about Franklin's is overscale. So suddenly when she's in that environment, as much as she's like powerful and owns her place, when she's in Franklin's, she's, you know, diminutive in that space, you know, and everyone who enters is, and, you know, the reality is that Franklin's personality and his command of that space, you know, makes it the proper scale for him, you know, but it's really not for anyone else, you know.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that to me is most fascinating of all. That's the kind of stuff that production designers do that I look forward to the most. And it takes a while for me to pick up on it because it's, you know, that's not my area, but it's so interesting how you're thinking along that line. You think about character and the story. You're not just thinking about what's going to look nice and pretty, which maybe some people assume production designers and set decorators do. That's not the case. So then it brings me to this. There's a whole other set of looks that we don't probably talk about very often on this show, and that's the legal side. So designing Haley's office. So she works in a stuffy old law firm, and she's very formidable and kind of slightly scary and yet unlikable. And yet likable. And then she's very likable. Noma Demeswini, great performance. And then the colder, austere courtroom. We see lots of courtrooms on TV, but this one to me felt freezing, like it felt really frigid and somewhere where you didn't want to be. So who's best to talk about the particular challenges of those particular sets?
So, I mean, look, the New York City legal system is quite a meat grinder. You know, I mean, I remember taking Susanna and the rest of the, you know, people who were not from the U.S. down to arraignment court so they could see what that was like. And you know, Anthony and Richard, Anthony Dodd-Mantle, who's our brilliant DP, and Richard, who's our first AD, you know, they had never experienced that. And I think they were just struck by how the volume and the pace and how much is happening in New York. And like, it just, you know, once you get caught up in that system, you're never getting out. And then we shot some stuff at the real courthouse downtown, but both the arraignment courtroom and the courtroom for the final trial, just because of the amount of time we needed in a courtroom, there was no way we could shoot in something that's real, but we certainly based it on that building. And you know, it's a fictionalized version of that space, but you know, those hallways are cool and creepy. And you know, and also like the other thing that we really wanted, I really wanted to convey is that, you know, so often courtrooms are set up like they're these, you know, almost like they're temples or something. And, you know, everything is pristine and polished. And we really worked hard, all of us, to convey how heavily used everything was, you know, like, so everything, you know, the pews and the judge's bench and the rail that separates the gallery from the front, like everything is just, you know, New York courts are like so heavily used, and we just wanted to have that vibe, you know. And then Keri did an amazing job of layering in all this, the workaday things, you know. So it's not just like, you know, 12 Angry Men where everything is just like perfect, you know. Like these, you know, there's 7 people in that courtroom who have an office, you know, that's their office they go to every day. So there's not just their desk, but there's their lamp and the pictures of their kids. And I don't know, Keri, you want to talk about like, you know, all the things that go into that?
Yeah, so we definitely dressed it as more than a courtroom, just because it is where these people show up every day. And but you know what, Lester, I felt like the floor was so interesting in our courtroom. Like I felt like that's kind of what set it apart from a lot of courtrooms and really made a visual impact, like on a lot of those overhead shots. But which is was not like I don't even remember if that was based on the.
It was really based on a real courtroom floor.
But
and you go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, no, but that was from the Bronx County Courthouse, not from the Manhattan Courthouse. But yeah, because we were looking in the beginning, can we shoot in a real courtroom, you know? And so we were looking all around, you know, the different boroughs to see what was available. And I was just struck by that floor because, yeah, that's not a typical courtroom floor, but it's quite interesting. And just tonally, you're right, the coolness of it was really something different. And you know, and it worked. Yeah, and it worked well with the wood because of the greens of the floor and then the browns of the wood, you know, so it all worked together nicely.
Yeah, it really did. And it was a place where I didn't want to be. And that doesn't happen to me often. I love being in a courtroom on TV, but in this show, I was quite happy to be back in the Fraser's apartment. That's the place where I wanted to be. And I was like, I want that artwork and I want that piece of furniture. And
right.
I'm sorry to say, but to me, a lot of that was my desperate desire for that New York porn. And that's what it was. It was that beautiful architecture that I found really, really enjoyable to just immerse myself in. Guys, thank you so much for your time today. Congratulations on great work on The Undoing. I know you worked on it a long time ago. We're still talking about it. It was the #1 show on HBO last year for a very good reason. And so good luck at the upcoming award season.
Great.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.